All right, welcome back to another episode of the Passion in Motion podcast. I'm your host, Mutsa, and today I am joined by another very special guest, Jack Jarrett. Hi, Jack. How's it going?
So very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, doing well, doing well. So, listener and watcher of the podcast, Jack is an HR professional, and today we will be talking about the use of AI, everything AI actually, AI in the employment space, in the hiring space, and just in the modern day, and just the ethical use of AI and stuff like that. Since we're in a time where AI is very, very prevalent and is very present, and people and countries and everyone is just trying to figure out this new technology that's around us, right? So that's what most of our conversation is going to be about today. So, Jack, let me actually ask you, like, how was first of all, in terms of the AI space, when did you get interested? Like, at what point did you say AI is here and wow, we need to look more into this? Like, what got you interested about AI in the first place?
It's such a good question, and for me, I first became interested in AI because it sits right at the intersection of technology, society, and ethics. These are areas I've always been fascinated about. And on the one hand, I could see AI offering incredible opportunities. It's going to help us solve problems faster, open up new ways of working, and even support efforts in areas like healthcare, education, or human rights. So its benefits to society are going to be huge. And I really saw that kind of a year and a half ago when I started to see kind of on the internet and on Reddit things about ChatGPT, and I was like, "What is ChatGPT?" And really started to look at it, and I was like, "Wow, the potential of this is awesome." But on the other hand, I quickly realized that the implications are going to go much further than the technical side that I kind of originally saw. So, what really drew me in was the question of impact. So, how are AI systems going to affect people's lives, whether that's around fairness, transparency, accountability, or power? And I wanted to understand not just what technology can do, but how it's being designed, who it benefits, and who might be left behind in the initial stages as well, and what we can do to
Yeah.
support those people. So for me, learning more about AI has always been about more than the algorithms themselves. It's about the human choices we make around them, and that curiosity and that tension, I guess, between kind of the promise that we hear and we read about and the risk as well is what's really hooked me in. And I think it's such an exciting space.
It is such an exciting space. The other thing as well, I think I feel like maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there've been two waves of AI, right? Because I feel like AI has always been present. It wasn't called AI though. It was maybe called like a smart tool to help, or like a help or something. Because like I think about Otter AI or something, which
Sure.
was I think way before ChatGPT and stuff like that came to the forefront, where it was like, oh, it just helps you transcribe stuff. Like we've always had tools that were kind of like AI-ish, but it didn't have the same name. And now we're in a situation where like, okay, there's now ChatGPTs, there's now AI where you can make deep fakes, you can make people's voices, you can make songs with AI, you can make video with AI. And we're kind of in a space now where like there's such a big boom of AI. On YouTube, there's even like a word for it. This it's like the AI slop, where people just like generate videos and throw them on YouTube and stuff like that. So why do you think now that people seem to feel like AI is such a new thing when it's always been present? Like, what do you think happened where people now feel? Because a lot of people are fearful of AI and what it's gonna do, but it's always been there. So, what do you think happened there?
Sure. Do you know, you're totally right. And it has been in kind of so many systems and kind of processes in some ways as well. One key thing I've been finding when I've been going to a lot of kind of conferences on this is distinguishing between AI and automation. So a lot of kind of organizations or products are saying, you know, this is an AI product, when actually it's just automation. So it's automating a process.
Mm.
So there's been quite a lot of kind of questions between well, a lot of organizations putting out products that perhaps are just really automation instead of AI. But to answer your question, right, AI has been around for a while. But I guess what really brought it to the forefront was things like ChatGPT, these large language models that were open to everyone, so anyone could access this and put in questions in real time and get answers. I mean, when I first came across ChatGPT and I was able to just type in a question and it come up with an answer straight away, it really was kind of a mind blowing moment. And I think that LLM, sorry, I should say, made a real difference and impact. I think that it being available to the masses as well in a usable format has made the real difference there. And that was with ChatGPT first, and of course we're seeing other iterations of that as well. Yes, that's why I think it's kind of picked up and stuff there.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, so I bring that up because right now in the job market, AI is now being used in recruitment, right? And a lot
Mm,
of people, because of just the way the world is, a lot of people are in the job market. A lot of people have been laid off, are looking for jobs. A lot of people, especially in Washington D.C. and stuff, but just around
mm,
the world globally, the job market is just bad. But now people are
mm.
also needing to figure out how a company using AI in the recruitment process. So that's let's go that direction now. So how is AI being used in recruitment? Like from what you've seen and even in your professional experience, how are companies now using AI in recruitment?
Do you know, it's a great question, and it really is a tough job market out there at the moment. It's certainly the toughest I've ever seen. Coming from the international development sector, same as yourself, I've seen so many incredible colleagues lose their jobs and down to unfortunate circumstances, and which really is it's nothing to do with them personally. It's very much to do just with a crazy job market at the moment. And yeah, there's just realizing there are so many people impacted. It's just a crazy time, but it's a great question in how AI is
Yeah.
being used in recruitment, and it differs from every organization and sector, as everyone's on kind of a different stage of their journey in using AI, from not using it at all, denying it, through to it playing a big part in a recruitment process. But for me, I've already seen that AI is already playing a big role in recruitment, often in ways that candidates might not even realize. So a lot of organizations are using AI tools to help with early stages of the hiring process. For example, algorithms can screen CVs and applications at scale, pulling out key skills and experiences that match a job description or a terms of reference. Then there are chatbots that are being used to answer candidate questions and even schedule interviews, which frees up a lot of recruiters' time. For me, chatbots are awesome because when you're applying for a role and you have questions like, "Oh, what's the hybrid working policy?" or "Where is the office located?" You
Mm.
kind of don't want to ask those questions to a recruiter repeatedly, but these chatbots can answer those kind of frequent questions 24/7. So I think that's a real game changer both for candidates and recruiters as well. There are also AI systems now that analyze video interviews. So looking at language use, tone, or responses. Although I know that these raise some big questions around bias and fairness. But on the more positive side, AI can really help reduce the admin burden for recruitment and HR teams, as it will do for I think all professions, making the process faster and sometimes even flag a more diverse pool of candidates than a human might spot on their own for a recruitment process. So in short, for me, I guess AI has automated a lot of those repetitive tasks in the hiring process, particularly those time consuming tasks like screening, scheduling, and basic communications in recruitment, while also enhancing data driven insights for hiring managers. So, giving them insights as to where particular candidates may be located for particular roles, or where may be the best place to hire certain skill sets. So, AI is really being a game changer there. But I guess
Mm.
the challenge is making sure these tools are used responsibly so they don't just replicate existing human biases as well. Because a lot of the recruitment kind of AI systems out there, they're only as good as the data that they've been trained on. So if there are existing biases within kind of an organization's recruitment data, if that isn't audited and kind of shifted out, then ultimately these AI support systems, AI, whatever you want to call them, they can end up being biased as well. So we're in the early stages of adopting it, but essentially there's a lot of potential and there's a lot of use cases already within AI and HR.
So, there are gonna be people, it may be like in the older generation who are in the
Sure.
job market because we're seeing a lot of people in, in middle age trying to like since a lot of people because of the job cuts and stuff, there were a lot of
Mm.
midlife professionals, and technology like AI, they haven't had to really think about use of AI when it comes to job applications because they haven't had to apply for jobs for some time,
No, you're totally right.
so if they're hearing this podcast and they've been curious about the use of, oh, okay, how can I use AI or how can I start implementing AI with my CV? What are some steps, some first initial steps that someone can take who hasn't been using AI or who's unsure about the use of like AI and how to go about it in terms of like, because I know you mentioned keywords in your resume. I know you mentioned some things that can make your resume stand out when it goes through the AI process. Like, okay, these are the things that it does. So, what are some steps that someone can take to make sure that their resume and the application is as strong as possible?
Do you know, it's a great question, and it's one that I get messaged about a lot on LinkedIn. You know, what AI tools should I be using? How can I make my application stronger using AI? Because it is a bit overwhelming. I mean, I find it overwhelming. There are so many new tools coming out left, right, and center and being published. Going, this is the latest tool on that. This is the latest tool on this. And it's quite normal to feel behind because it's developing at such a rapid rate AI that it's almost impossible to stay up to speed. So I just want to reassure people with that as well. But I guess for anyone who feels like they're struggling with AI in the hiring process or using it to improve their job opportunities, I guess the good news is there are a lot of practical ways to get up to speed. You know, a simple starting point is to learn how applicant tracking systems work. So basically, how CVs are scanned for keywords. And there are some free online guides or even AI powered CV checkers that can help you tailor your application so it gets through that first filter. So there are kind of processes that can do that. But I would personally say just experiment with AI tools yourself. For example, using them to practice interview questions, polishing their CV, or checking the clarity of their writing. That hands-on practice builds familiarity and confidence. So I've been advising a lot of people to become AI first users. So what does that mean? So just starting to use an AI tool, say like ChatGPT, or Microsoft Copilot or whatever it is, to kind of support your everyday tasks. So looking at kind of your day-to-day tasks, whether that be kind of personal or in your professional life, and looking at things that you think it could help with. So one way it can help with, for me, for instance, is I noticed straight away I could start using it to help me write job adverts based on job descriptions. So I started to use it for that as the first like example of using AI, and from there I was able to build up my confidence through that one case. There was that really improved, that really improved the amount of time it takes to write adverts. And I was able to improve there. So I would advise just starting to use it in simple case studies, ChatGPT, for instance, and going from there. But I'd also say I'd keep it in perspective as well. AI might be part of the process, but employers are still looking for people with the right skills, motivation, and potential. So the best strategy is to understand how the tools work, adapt your approach, and then focus on showing your authentic strengths. Would be really kind of my takeaways from that. But I guess when one really, really great case study I saw recently that my friend's been using AI to help with his job application is he's been using it essentially as a critical friend. So he puts in the job description and his CV into an LLM like ChatGPT and asks it, I am looking to apply for this role. Please review the CV I prepared and look at it critically and provide the strengths and weaknesses of my application in the guise of this organization. And from there, the ChatGPT was able to provide some really detailed feedback on where his kind of strengths were in his application and where his potential weaknesses were as well. But I guess so that was a really, really good case study. So that's a good use of AI that I would really encourage people to do when they're looking for a role. So use it as a critical friend. But one thing I would say when getting up to speed, getting better or more confident at using AI is to get better at prompt engineering. So what is prompt engineering? So prompt engineering is essentially the information you put into an LLM like ChatGPT to essentially get an answer. So please help me write an application for this role, for instance. You need to get really good at writing very detailed prompts, as if you're asking an assistant to support you in a application, for instance. But really develop detailed prompts because essentially AI systems are only as good as the information that you put in. So getting better at putting in the right information through a prompt is really crucial in developing a skill set for job applications and also for being able to use AI more broadly to support your every day-to-day task as well. And if you kind of look on Google and Coursera, LinkedIn Learnings, there are some really, really good basic trainings on prompt engineering to run through what it is and how to get better at it. So prompt engineering, or essentially the information you put into a LLM like ChatGPT, is the key to get the most out of it. So really upskilling there is one of the key areas I would advise everyone to do as a first standing point.
That's good. That's really good advice because I have heard as well people like, you put your CV on ChatGPT, you also put the job description and you kind of see like, okay, what's the match? What do I need to improve on? Like, so what you're saying. So I know that's a really great use of AI. What about people who who generate their resumes from AI and just take it, copy and paste, put it in an application? Is that the way to go about it? Because I know some people like do that.
Do you know what I see so many of these applications come through, and I really, really advise against it because it ends up just coming out with the same. Everyone has the same format, the same style, and the same just the same wording and so forth. So it doesn't show any of your personality or any of your personal strengths. It just comes out as a very generic application. And to this point, the other day I was reviewing applications for a role, and I had two CVs and two applications that were almost identical, both in style and style, format, and what had been written essentially by the companies the person had worked for. And it was very clear they'd used just essentially put the got a large language model like ChatGPT to write their resume, and I was instantly kind of I essentially was already kind of turned off by their application because of that. So I would really advise using AI as a tool to assist you to develop your job application, not as a tool to do your job application. So that would be my guidance there.
Yeah, it's I can understand some people, and then it gets tricky, right? Because then you start to think, okay, like, are jobs using screening as well? Like, do you screen people's resumes? Like, oh, has AI been used, right? Because like in colleges now, they have there's an app they use called Turnitin where like they check for plagiarism or the use of AI, and like they just check like an AI detector, like how much of this was auto generated, right? Are jobs doing something similar? Do you think it could somewhat get there in the future where they're like, if you've used too much AI on your resume, it's gonna get rejected? Like, let's say if through that screening tool by another AI model, is there gonna be that level of scrutiny, or like, oh, if you this 70% AI generated, so check it out, doesn't even meet the requirements, or we can't accept this resume, or your application? What's the healthy balance between AI from the recruiter side and AI from the applicant side?
It's a great question, and it's such an interesting debate. Just firstly on kind of AI detectors, so to speak. So
Yeah.
what I've seen so far, there hasn't been any product that can 100% say with certainty that something is written by AI. So there, from that point of view, it can say we think this is generated by AI, but it can't say 100%. And and there have been a few instances where it has called out applications for using strong AI, and then it just turns out that the person writing it is neurodiverse. So the way that they wrote was similar, for instance, in some of the case studies I've seen. So from that point of view, I would say that just to make people aware that yes, there are detectors out there, but they're not 100% accurate. They just give an indication there. And I think every organization, whether they're a university or whether they're a recruiting organization, they're very aware that this is just a suggestion. So just to caveat that there as well with regards to this. And I think on this as well, when you're applying for roles, I would always advise candidates to look on the company's website, because more and more companies now are becoming legally required to say how they're using AI in their recruitment processes. And that's going to become more and more prominent as regulation, such as the EU AI Act, for instance, comes into play. So you should, within the next year, be able to go on a company's website, and it should tell you what is good use of AI and what is bad use of AI for that organization. And there are some great examples, but I would advise doing that in the first instance as well, because they should be able to advise you doing good use of AI is doing research and potential interview questions. A bad use of AI is using it to write your resume, as we've discussed, or using it during an interview, which I've had before, where I could clearly see somebody was typing in and generating answers, for instance. So just on those 2 points is what I'd say. But in terms of kind of getting to a point where an organization is going to say this has been too much use of AI, I'd say it's hard to say with certainty, but for me, if you're providing clear guidance as a hiring organization and the candidate is clearly going above and beyond, and it's clear that they're using AI throughout their application, through the detection and through the human judgment, then yeah, I would say that that's coming more and more into effect as well. But it really is up to an organization to stipulate to candidates what is good use of AI and what is bad use of AI, as I said, and that should really steer the candidates on how to use it going forward, because I think it's a really, really big problem, and it's part of the reason why you and I are probably having so many questions on it now, is there isn't enough steer from large employers and organizations as to how do I use AI, in the application process for this organization. What are the do's and don'ts for this organization, and it is going to differ from sector to sector and organization to organization. So yes, I'd say there was going to be more stringent, reviews of AI and how it's being used. But it's such a good question you raised, because it's impossible to know if you're sitting there as a candidate and there's no guidance on. Oh, well, they haven't said anything, so I assume I can use AI throughout the whole thing. So it is really hard to say. But one thing
Yeah.
when I review applications is that chatbots or LLMs such as Microsoft Copilot are being used every day in working life now. So candidates' ability to use AI to support those administrative tasks, to enhance applications, to enhance their work, is going to become more and more prominent and required as we go forward. So I would always, I would be encouraging candidates to use AI in their application to support and enhance it going forward. And I think, I'm already seeing in quite a few job descriptions, and apologies to go off on a tangent here, but more and more organizations are saying, how do we want people who are using AI in this way to support this type of thing. So it's becoming more and more of a requirement of for roles going forward. And I think every role soon will have a requirement for AI use, for using it to support their day-to-day work. So candidates will need to use it as part of their application, and it will become a key skill. So it's a very difficult balancing act at the moment until we get there, where more organizations are confidently saying this is how we want to use AI, and these are requirements that we want in terms of people having the skill set in AI to this level or whatever it may be. But because there's not enough guidance out there at the moment, I think it's really challenging for a lot of candidates out there, particularly when perhaps you're applying for your first role straight out of kind of grad school, or kind of you've been laid off and you're looking for a new role, because you're applying to so many different roles, right? And it's very hard to keep editing and tailoring it to different organizations all the time when you just want to get your applications out there. So it's a real kind of industry issue, recruitment issue across all industries. And until there is kind of clear guidance from large organizations, more large organizations, and from more hirers, and perhaps more government steer from this. I'm kind of supporting some of the UK government through Better Hiring Institute on this as well, on advising on how we should be using AI to make recruitment processes quicker. But there's a real debate on the ethical side of it as well. But just to emphasize, it's such a difficult time at the moment for candidates to know how to use AI, because there's no clear guidance in a lot of cases.
Yeah, so that actually prompts my next question. Do you think that AI has been adopted too early in the recruitment process? Like, if there's so many questions and so much a lack of clear guidance, have companies or are companies adopting AI too early in the recruitment process, given all these questions that we still all have, and without, streamlined processes to actually do it properly as yet? What do you think about that?
It's a great question, because I think first and foremost, AI is here to stay. It's here. It's being used by candidates. It's being used in the day-to-day work. So we need to kind of we need to be quick. We need to be implementing this as part of our recruitment processes, I think. But I think you're totally right that some organizations are very quick to adopt, but perhaps and some of the risks are that they're training the AI systems on data that is historically being biased, for instance. So it's so the actual AI that they're using in their recruitment processes to kind of sieve out applications is producing bias results and bias candidate pools in terms of the diversity and so forth. So it is, to answer your question, it is still very much we're still very much learning. We're in the very, very early stages of using AI for recruitment, but I think we need to start using it. But it's
Okay.
but I think the challenge is that um, is that is that a lot of organizations are struggling with the ethical side as well, in terms of in terms of that diversity and so forth. And there's a big problem as well where a lot of vendors that are perhaps putting out AI tools that aren't really AI tools. They're kind of automation tools and so forth as well, which creates another big issue. But just to answer your question up front, I think that we need to start firstly providing guidance on how to use AI as part of the recruitment process. And I think every organization, I think, and sorry, just to kind of perhaps this just answers the question more succinctly. I think I would advise an organization before they kind of start shooting out information about AI to have an AI policy that fits their organization, fits their brand, fits the ethics, fits everything. And once that organizational AI policy is in place, then using it in their recruitment processes and so forth. Because if they don't have an AI policy in place, you'll find that the AI, from what I've seen, the use of AI just kind of shoots off in every different direction. But if they have a guiding policy to start off with, and then from there, it is then they then start using AI in their recruitment processes. That has given the best results that I've seen so far, both to candidates and to the recruitment teams as well, because they can clearly label on their website, this is our position on AI. These are good uses of AI. These are bad uses of AI. I think AI is, ultimately is a very sexy tool at the moment, quote unquote. So to have but for organizations to truly be able to use it and utilize it, I think you need to have the foundations in place first, and that starts from having a policy and then going on to implement that policy in recruitment practices, and then also an external communication. So it provides clear guidance to candidates as well. Otherwise, if you don't have these guardrails in place early on, then I think it does lead to issues with regards to kind of with regards to the recruitment outcomes and so forth. So I would advise just having that policy in place first. That means that a company can actually use AI tools effectively. And I've seen some really good case studies of that once they've got those policies in place first. So otherwise, I think companies can adopt stuff too quickly without actually truly understanding how they as an organization want to use AI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So one of the final questions here. So in terms of just you've alluded to this as well, but the ethical use of AI in the hiring process, right?
Mm,
How can organizations be more in tune, or make sure that they are doing what's right in terms of considering how, like, racial stuff, socioeconomic background, gender, disability, and all that stuff. And in terms of how
mm,
AI is getting, because as you mentioned, someone can just have a different writing style. They could be neurodivergent, and the way they write could, come across as this sounds a little chat GPT-ish when it's actually
mm,
not. That's just how they write. Or a
mm,
different culture writes differently, right? Maybe a German culture is more like to the point and straight to the point, as compared to a Southern African, someone from Southern Africa
mm,
who writes in a
mm,
more, colorful way. So different writing styles for different applications and stuff. But
mm.
then, so what are some of the ethical considerations that companies should think about, in terms of using AI, and in terms of like making sure that they're giving everybody a fair shot, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think first and foremost is having that policy in place, and then communicating that on their website as to what is good use, what isn't bad use, and how AI is going to be used throughout their recruitment process. Through doing that, I think it provides everyone with a clear steer as to how to use it and how not to use it. But to answer your question, on the kind of the ethics side, I would say one of the most practical ways is by ensuring that the historical data that's being used, it is kind of cleansed of any bias. Otherwise, that does end up reinforcing patterns where the AI is selecting candidates that that perhaps say things in a certain way or so forth. And a key way to kind of reduce that risk is firstly by being very intentional about the data they use. So making sure it's diverse, representative, and doesn't overly rely on narrow indicators like certain schools or job titles, for instance, which is I kind of think is a real kind of no-go, but I've seen a lot of organizations use that. And secondly, by regularly auditing and testing the algorithms to spot any unfair patterns, like whether a certain gender or candidate from certain backgrounds are being disproportionately scanned out or screened out, I should say. And thirdly is by just keeping humans in the loop. So AI will help kind of process that information, but the final decision should rest with the people who are trained to think critically about fairness as well. So this should be very much an enabler. It should be a tool that is used as part of the recruitment process. But it should ultimately be down to a human to make that final decision on kind of any recruitment process. And I think that's really key. If a algorithm is making the final decision on a recruitment process, I think that's where kind of a lot of the issues arise. And as I kind of said before, it's just I think the transparency is going to be so crucial, and it needs to be really clear to both the candidate and recruiter. They need to know how the tools are working and what factors are being considered. You know, ultimately, as I said, AI shouldn't be making the hiring decisions, but it's got to be used responsibly as one piece of a recruitment process to make it fairer and more inclusive and a more inclusive process as well. So that would be kind of my things there as well. And I guess it's also a question of accountability as well. So if an AI system screens someone out unfairly, we need to be very clear on who takes responsibility for that. That can't just be left to the technologist. Said the organization has to really own that, and areas of privacy, the privacy matters as well. So I think the recruitment involves sensitive personal data, so AI systems need to handle it securely and with respect for the candidate's rights as well. So I think, in short, I'm sorry to go on a tangent, the ethical considerations are about making sure AI supports a fair and inclusive process and doesn't undermine trust in the very people it's meant to serve. So we are seeing increasing regulatory action here from kind of the EU AI Act and OECD frameworks, which are promoting and prompting organizations to comply, for instance, with in highlighting how they're using AI throughout the recruitment process, and are ultimately being required to show how AI is helping them come to a certain decision as well. And they're being required to make sure that they're able to display that when called upon. But it's a really interesting area, ethics, and I think it's really going to depend on the type of organization you work for. If you're working for, say, a not-for-profit that stands for a certain kind of values, that's going to be very different, perhaps, in the ethics that a large finance organization might have as well. So it is going to vary from organization to organization, but I think those points are covered. And the regulation that are coming up are really going to put pressure on organizations to make sure that they are ethical. But again, it does come down to the guidance that are coming from governments and so forth. If it isn't there, it leaves a lot of room for error. And I think legislation and so forth is only just catching up with how people are using it, if I'm being very honest.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, technology is moving really fast. No, that's good. You know what? This has been really hopefully an informative and educational episode for people to understand, because when it comes to AI, like you were saying, it's still relatively new, and there's still a lot of unknown, and there's still a lot of conversations that need to be had. And so I'm glad that we're at least putting this out there, because you're more knowledgeable on the topic of AI and its use, especially in recruitment, and maybe what things people can do better. So I hope that somebody will find this conversation helpful. And again, these conversations will not end. They're still ongoing, as others will see, like, okay, this is still an ongoing. It's not like just going to end here. We're still in the very beginning stages of this. So yeah,
you're totally right, Mr. And AI is here to stay, definitely. That is one thing we can say. It's already deeply woven into everyday life, from search engines, maps, to streaming recommendations and workplace tools. So what will change is how it develops, how we continue to regulate it, and how responsibly it's used. And I think, like past technological shifts, like the internet, the smartphone, for instance, once society starts building around it, there's no going back, and we're already at that stage. So the real focus now isn't whether AI will stay or kind of the latest developments, but how we make sure it benefits people fairly, avoids harm, and supports those human decision making rather than replacing it. As we kind of spoke to the ethics side. So I guess, in short, for me, AI isn't going anywhere, but how we shape its role in society is very much in our hands at the moment. Yes, but it's a really, really
Yeah.
exciting time.
It is. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast and give us all your AI knowledge. I really do think that we've at least opened the eyes for a lot of people and at least given them a starting point if they've been unsure about how to move forward in the job market and in the job process with the use of AI for themselves
Mm,
and for where they're
mm.
applying. So hopefully this helps to shed some light on this. So if you're listening to this episode and you have more questions, please drop them in the comment section, and we'll see if we can address those. And if we need to have another episode, if other things come up when it comes to AI stuff, because again, this is an ongoing thing that's happening in the world, and AI is here to stay. So there will be more conversations needed. But Jack, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and giving us your wealth of information. I really appreciate it, and I've learned a lot from it, so I hope others will too. And with that, listener, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.